the state of Rhode Island is currently in violation of something the United Nations promulgated called the Mandela Rules. The Mandela Rules govern the behavior of the state with regard to solitary confinement. Rhode Island is effectively a state. 7 by 23 lockdowns, 1 hour a day during the week, no natural sunlight, limited meals, filthy conditions. And again, the toughest part for me is that Nelson Mandela was caged in an 8 by 10 box. Incredibly enough, at the adult correctional institute in Branson, the box that our fellow rounders, our teachers, are a foot longer. As governor, will you end the process as is currently envisioned as solitary confinement? Thank you.
Thank you.
I think I heard most of the question, and I want to say I'm so glad you raised this. Thank you. And I'm not familiar with the United Nations particular clause that you raised, but I will say that I have a very close family member who works in the public defender's office, and every day is seeing the how unfair our system can be, how unfair and cruel it can be. So I'm very open to making sure that we re-examine solitary confinement. And I don't know all the particulars of what you said, but I will say that I think the most important part of our prison system is making sure we have reform and helping people emerge on the other end. And solitary confinement, to me, sounds unnecessarily cruel and harsh. And I'd be honored to work with you to understand how we could resolve it.
Yeah, absolutely. We do need to end that practice, and we need to do much more than just that. We need to look at what are the resources that we're applying to the people that are on the inside, so that for those that are coming out, that they have access to jobs. We need to look at expungement of records. I advocated very strongly for the expungement part of the cannabis legislation. I had conversations with people at the State House about this because it is wrong. Now, because we have an opioid crisis, suddenly addiction is a mental health issue. In the 80s, and I'm old enough to remember the 80s, addiction was a crime. What has changed? Who is being affected by those conditions? And who is dying of these addictions? And so we need to make sure that we level the playing field, that we invest resources in the various communities. And part of it is going into the public safety programs that we have and ensuring that we're providing all the opportunities for a reentry into society that maximizes that person's ability to succeed. Housing is key. If you come out of prison and you don't have a home to start with, you go try to find a job. You need to start by, the person is served, they need to have the supports that say, you're a valued member of society now, let's move you through. I'm very proud that as Secretary of State, I worked with the employees there at the Department of Corrections to make sure that we had civic education, so that anybody coming out of the prison and now having their rights automatically restored, that we did that. We made sure that they understood that they were now registered voters again, and they had that amazing power to make a change and to have their voices heard again.
I am so glad that you asked this question, because I was trying to figure out how to respond to the doctor when he said that some candidates hadn't taken a stand about this, and this is a great segue, because solitary confinement is torture, and the practice must be stopped. With me as governor, you will have somebody who stops this form of torture. It is cruel, it is unusual, and there is no place in Rhode Island for solitary confinement. Also, we need to do a better job with criminal justice reform. We talk a lot about the American dream, but the other thing that is uniquely American is the idea of second chances. And if you have done your time and you want to re-enter the community, you should be able to participate in the community as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Pat,
what amazes me is that you had to bring up the question for this to be a part of the discussion, right? That's what amazes me the most. It is torture. It is torture. And we do need to address the fact that we have a criminal justice system that has been looking away from people being tortured here in the state of Rhode Island. You know, addiction came up and you know, how we're criminalizing things. You know, we're criminalizing not just addiction, we're criminalizing poverty. People are being harassed because they're sleeping on the streets and we're not helping them get housing in this state. They're ending up in prison, then they're ending up in solitary confinement. You know, systems designed to kill people's spirits inevitably destroy societies. You know, we saw it with the Greek civilizations and the Romans. So here we are again, full circle, after 2020, where we were talking about racial justice, and then still, like, you have to ask the question about whether solitary confinement is torture or not. It is. What's even more torture is when children of those who are incarcerated have to look at their parents and wonder whether, you know, when they're going to see them again. And those children have to grow up with the trauma of not having a loved one accessible. And then what happens then to that child? Do they see this path that they're going to be set on? And I'm bringing all this up because I was a kid growing up with a father who struggled with addiction when it was criminalized, when pills were being pushed out by corporations. And you know, I had to wonder at times as a kid, you know, if my dad gets caught up in the prison system, which he was fortunate to not, but if he did, would I ever see him again? So anyway, I'm just drawing up something personal because for me, it's the trauma of youth that also have loved ones and of family members that have those loved ones that are being tortured that has a ripple effect in our communities. And that's what destroys us as a society. So, thank you.
In the last century, countries around the world decided that it was a violation of international law for countries to torture enemies that they capture during war. And Rhode Island is torturing its own citizens with solitary confinement. So it's something that is so far past the time when it should have been banned, and I'm for banning it right away. Thank you.